Hey, welcome to Widow Too Soon. This is your host, Mark Massaro, along with my co-host and good friend, Michelle Bader. Michelle, how's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah? What's
Yeah.
new in Michelle land?
Well, I shared last week about my nonprofit. So I've just continued to work on that, reaching out to churches. I've heard back from a few. So I'm going to set up some meetings
Yay.
and yes, and hopefully have some widows to service soon. So I have a few that like people have told me about, but they haven't actually reached out to me. So I'm waiting for them to reach out to me so that we can get that going where I can start visiting them. I've got a couple donations, so I have some money to work with to start, buying gifts for them. So that's been really, really exciting. And just like thinking about the possibilities of what this could mean, like
Yeah.
not only here, but all over as we really build this. So that's been, the biggest focus recently. Haley, my daughter, started driving.
Yeah.
So yeah, just yesterday, or the day before, she was like, before she was like, I never want to drive. It seems scary. She's almost 16. So all of a sudden she's like, all my friends are driving. Maybe I should try it.
Nice.
So I took her driving. And so it was another one of those bittersweet moments because the last time we did this was with Luke teaching Hayden.
Mm,
And she goes, I wish that daddy could. What do you no, She says something about like, I wish that daddy could see this. He'd probably say something like, good job, princess. I was like, yeah, maybe he can see it. Just like we've talked about before, I think people can see the good moments from heaven. So I was like, maybe he can, this is a good moment. And so it was bittersweet, but she did great. She's a natural. She's super cautious, which I love. Like, I'm not worried about her. Like, she's
nice.
all we did for 30 minutes, not kidding. We were in a parking lot, circle, turn to the right. Now, should I try the other way? Turn to the left. I did teach her how to park once in reverse, but it's pretty much circles for like 30 minutes. But it was good, like just getting comfortable with the car. So that was really fun.
Boys do that too. They drive in circles, but with the foot all the way to the floor doing donuts.
Yeah, she went up to like, I think 15 miles per hour. So,
Dang.
pretty fast. I mean, she started at like 5. So we got up a little
Good though.
faster.
It's good
So
to respect it.
yeah, so that was good. And then, we're thinking forward in a few months to Hayden's graduating. So we're doing college visits. So
Wow.
tomorrow, no, Wednesday, we're going to a college probably an hour south of here in Salem, Oregon, called Corbin. That is a Christian college. And they also have basketball, so he's really interested in it. And then we're going to Washington State University during spring break to visit where he's already been accepted. And then we have a few more visits. So that's kind of exciting, just looking at that next chapter and what's that's going to be like. And yeah, so that's some of my stuff. What about you?
Yeah, well, that's all super cool. I'm still settling in. There's a lot involved in that. It just seems like daily there's just something new that I need to handle.
Yeah.
There's a lot involved in moving,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
moving out of state and
Oh, I'm
moving out
sure.
of state at tax time and
Oh,
moving out of state at tax time when you're buying a house.
yeah.
There's just a lot that I've been, running around trying to handle, but it's all good. Everything's been going really smooth, except for my poor little boy, Luke, has an eye infection.
Oh.
Looks like he got into a little kindergarten fight and got punched in the eye. Poor thing. He his eyes like swollen closed almost. But I took him to the doctor yesterday and it was no big deal. That they said like it's a localized infection. He can still go to school and gave me some advice and prescription. And so getting that taken care of, which it's always hard to see your, little baby boy.
Yeah.
And he's not in pain, but like it looks like he's in pain. And I'm like, every time I see him, I'm like, oh, dude, come here, give me a hug. I'm so sorry. He's like, it's okay. Can I have Cheetos? Like, normally I would say no right now, but your eye, yes. So I think he really likes that because he's like, can I have
his
this?
ticket?
Can I have that? I still have to tell him no to certain things because he'll just eat like candy all the time if I let him. So
Yeah.
I've been taking them to the park a lot lately, which has been really fun.
Oh,
It's been
nice.
really a blessing to have like a normal routine in life where I drop the kids off at school and pick them up and go to the park and go to the grocery store. And it's just very different from the life I was living before. And it's been a tremendous blessing. And one of our listeners reached out to me and sent me a really sweet message, and we chatted back and forth a little bit. And that was like really encouraging because I was kind of feeling A little lonely, honestly, when she sent me
Yeah.
the message, and it was just really welcomed and really nice and thoughtful, and just said she's praying for us in this new
That's so
chapter of
nice.
life, and it was really sweet. So let's see, what else? What else? That's about the gist of it. Just,
Yeah.
doing home improvements and stuff like that. You know how I do. I
Mm-hmm.
can't look at something that's, not right and not make it right. So I
Yeah.
constantly I've been getting all kinds of things delivered to my house. I'm sure the UPS and mail people just hate me because all these packages just keep showing
Uh-huh.
up every day. But so I'm constantly trying to stay ahead of the deliveries and get the projects
Yeah.
done. But that was part of my plan. It was in my budget to, buy certain things when I got on
Right.
this end. Because you always have to think about, is it worth it to pay money to traverse this thing across the country?
Right.
So anyways, that's what's been going on with me. That's about the gist of it. I'm sure there's like 40 other things I could think of. But that's
I
the bulk
like
of it.
that you've been sharing on Facebook like a lot about your journey. I think people really like to see that. I mean, I'm sure lots of them, just like with me, have followed your whole journey through
Mm,
everything. And I think it's so good for people to see like what we've been through and then where we are now. And
mm-hmm.
so I think it's awesome that I feel like you've been like more active on social media and like just kind of sharing more, which I think is great.
Thank you. I
You know?
actually had this post pop up recently. I'm trying to see if I can find this real quick. Sorry. Um, so yeah, we're basically I can't find it, but basically it was about telling people to like encouraging people, and it was right after. So you know what? It must not have been a memory. I must have been scrolling back because it was shortly after Lacey died. And where I was encouraging people, no, I'm sorry. It was after I announced on Facebook that she had cancer.
Mm,
And so actually it was a memory because it was like 6 months into our journey or something like that. So, but anyways, it was just interesting to reread
right.
the words that came from my soul in
Mm,
a moment where I was going through so much desperation. It was, if anybody's ever listened to episode 1, which is me telling, the story of what Lacey and I went through. It was something I posted right after she got home from the hospital visit that was so intense, where she was having seizures and all that stuff. And I basically just, that was when I announced to people, like to the public, basically, that Lacey had cancer,
mhm.
and was just really encouraging people to hold on to their loved ones and to cherish them,
Right.
and to not take for granted that their kids are healthy or that
Yeah.
their spouse is healthy, and just encouraging people not to fight over petty stuff,
Mhm.
but one of the words that stuck out in my head, and I remember feeling this way, is that I said, all the things that I was praying about at that time that seemed like such big deals, I wished that those were my problems. All of the
Right.
things I was praying about before Lacey got cancer that just felt like these huge things in my life, all of a sudden became insignificant
Yeah,
overnight.
exactly. Yep.
And it's like that perspective, when people say, that if God sat you down at a table with a whole bunch of other people and he said, write down your biggest problem on a piece of paper and hand it to me, and I'm going to take care of it for you. The story goes that you would look at the person next to you and what they're writing down, and you would crumple yours up and be like, I can't write this. Look at what
Mhm.
they're going through,
Mhm.
and kind of a thing. And so it was just interesting. It was interesting to see this memory because I remember the desperation I had to tell people how fragile life is, and
Right.
to point them back to Jesus. So
You know, I heard a saying a long time ago, I actually used it this week. If money or time can fix it, it's not a problem. Think about
mm,
that. If money or time can fix it, it's not a problem. Like our loved ones had cancer. We couldn't fix that. Like we can't fix it with time. We can't fix it with money. And just
mm,
to, I know there are problems like we have them, but just to put it in perspective,
yeah,
like it's not really a big problem compared to sickness and death,
right.
so
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's a
that
good
was
point.
something.
And we're all human, right? I mean, we all
Right.
go through these things where,
Yes.
whatever you're going through feels like the biggest thing in the
Yes,
world.
definitely.
But it's a good perspective to try and remind yourself, because I've gone through some things lately that pale in comparison to losing my sweet
Right.
bride. But they're
hard.
like
Yeah.
really stressful things. But it is good to step back and remind yourself, like, okay, this isn't that big of a deal. It just feels like it is, So I like that. That's good. So that's how I'm going to pathetically segue into today's topic, which is advice for the newly widowed.
Yeah.
Because not that we're like, experts or anything, but I think we're somewhat at the like veteran stage of this, where we've been through everything almost twice.
Yeah.
You are really close.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, in about 2 months, little less than 2 months, it'll be 2 years.
Yeah,
crazy.
That's right, because I think I'm at 19 months.
I'm at 22. So yeah.
So yes. And we've learned a lot. Now,
Yeah.
Michelle and I are not experts, as you obviously know. But we have learned a lot, and especially compared to somebody who's 1, 2, 3 months out, or even a couple days out or whatever. So we would like to share what we've learned and any advice for you that are in these stages. And first of all, we are so sorry that you are here. So Michelle, what would you say to a new widow or widower?
And I say this all the time, and it's what like half of my videos are about. It will get better. And that was the only thing that I wanted to hear. I called all the widows I knew, and I just wanted to hear that it will get better. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice. Whatever pain you're feeling will get better. You'll still have pain, but it'll be less. And I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. Losing someone is like an amputation. They are gone, but you learn to live without them. You learn to adapt, but you always miss them. But it won't feel so intense. In fact, I wanted to read a little bit of this. The other day I found things I posted, like day 1 of being a widow, day 2. And just looking back, it is amazing to see where God has me now. So I just wanted to read a little bit of this. So it's day 1. Yesterday, I survived my first full day as a widow. So surreal. I woke up crying and felt like it was all a bad dream. I laid in bed for hours with Haley as we cried and talked and were comforted by my sister-in-laws and best friend, Deborah. I finally got the strength to get out of bed and face the day, the first day without Luke. I talked with my counselor, hospice nurse, and so many people as we were surrounded by love. About 1,000 times I cried as I saw Luke's things where he left them, like his prosthetic leg, hat, glasses, and clothes. I lost it when I saw our Christmas tree stand, and the thought of doing Christmas without Luke, who loved Christmas time, is extremely debilitating. Everyone around me knew what to do without me even asking. Deborah took the kids out when I needed a moment and let out the agonizing pain I was feeling, and I laid in my mom's lap and cried and wailed from a place of pain I didn't even know was possible. My family came over and did all kinds of cleaning and projects that needed to get done. They didn't even ask. They just saw what needed and did it. That is what I need right now. People who see a need and do it, as I have no idea when asked what I really need. I've never felt the love and care of Jesus so much as I did while watching my house full of people working to help us. We keep Luke's memory alive by constantly talking about him throughout the day and laughing with fun memories, but there's still a huge empty feeling in our house. Our hearts are breaking, and we are struggling with the last memories we have with Luke, as he didn't look like himself. And we are praying that we can just remember him how he was and with his handsome smile. Please pray for us in this area. I saw things the kids thankfully didn't that were a bit traumatizing, and I want to get past that. Haley and I stayed up until after 2 a.m. talking, and I feel an even deeper bond with her and all of the kids as we navigate through pain. There were moments yesterday that I thought I couldn't go on, but then God gave me more strength. I know we will rise again. I know God will make beauty out of these painful ashes, and we will one day be able to make it through the day without crying. Thank you for all the texts, calls, messages, comments, etc. I'm overwhelmed by the outpouring of love, and I may not get back to each person right now, but please know that I appreciate your love. Please keep us in your prayers today as we face another day without Luke. I also need prayer for all the burial decisions and legal things I must deal with. As always, continued prayers are appreciated. So interesting. And I think I saw you nodding to some of it. Like you can probably relate to a lot of that empty feeling that's in your house. Like that to me was crazy. Like it was
weird,
strange as you can't explain it, but it was the most like eerie kind of feeling like
Yeah.
this person who'd been there so long, not there. And then just those feelings of like, whoa, this is horrible. And that kind of brings me to another point. Some advice is make a list when you can. In the beginning, you can't even, but you know how people are like, let me know what you need, let me know if you ever need anything. Like, you don't know. So what I found helpful, not like the first day, I didn't have the energy to do that, but when I could, I made a specific list and I sent it to what I call my tribe, like my people, like my close friends and family, and said, if you want to help, here's a specific list, because they don't know what to do. And that, people say it, but it is almost one of the worst things that you can say. Let me know if you need anything. Like, I do not say that to people because I understand they don't know what they need. So that's where you need to be specific. Like, people need to be specific to you. But if you know, like, hey, I'd really appreciate a meal on this day, or if you could take the kids, or if you could, that is really helpful. So, I mean, those are, I guess, the two big things. It will get better, and tell people what you want. And I just wanted to like share that experience because I know you guys listening can relate. And the point of that is to show you, like, you guys know where I'm at now. I'm in a very joyful, peaceful place. I'm doing really well. Do I still have grief? Yes, I had a little bit this past week, but I'm not stuck in it. Like, that used to be where I cried every single day. And now it's very, very rare that I cry over grief. I know we'll have some coming up with my son's graduation and stuff like that, but overall, I'm in a good place. So a couple things, like, how did you relate to that? And what's some of your advice?
Well, how I relate to, I mean, I really related to the empty house feeling. It is so, even when it's coming.
Right.
I know that Luke and Lacey were in a little bit different situations, but for the most part, I mean, you and I both were in the same boat where we knew it was coming.
Yes.
It still was so obviously terrible and sad, but just weird.
Yeah.
And when you've been married for so long and together, some people would think that we weren't married that long.
Right.
But, I mean, in my mind, I was with Lacey for almost half of my life. And
right.
We knew each other so well. And so it was like really interesting to just, I kept saying like, oh my gosh, like she's gone. I can't believe she's gone. Yeah. And I was alone and I was truly alone because the kids were with my in-laws at the time. And, so then all of a sudden I had this anxiety that I had to go pick up the kids and tell them, even though one of my prayers was that the kids wouldn't be there when it happened. Right. And that was answered, thankfully. And, but it was still really difficult because that was really hard to do. But yeah, just the feeling of like being alone in the house for a full day and I remember I had a lot of friends that came over. A handful of really close friends that came over. I think there were 5 of us or 6 of us. And, I felt pretty good having all these people around me, and we're telling stories about Lacey and, encouraging each other, and they were encouraging me, and that reminding me that she's not suffering anymore and she's in paradise. She's with Jesus right now. And all those things were just like, yeah, you're right. And I just felt like, honestly, I felt good about it because I felt so, when you love someone on that level, you truly can be happy for them.
Yes.
And kind of separate your own feelings. And so I was so happy that she was in Jesus's arms and that she wasn't suffering anymore and that she was in paradise. And she was experiencing that in that moment, that every time I thought about it, I was like, she's still with him. She's with him right now. But then everybody left. And I was kind of in a position of, well, how do I feel? And I just was falling apart. And like, it was really hard and was getting really overwhelmed at the reality of my situation. And so that's, I guess, to sum up that first part of it. So something I like to think about for widows or widowers that are just, new to this is that kind of have a heads up of what to expect. People are going to think, and you just need to know this, people are going to think all kinds of things. They're going to wonder about when you're going to start dating again. They're going to wonder if your spouse had life insurance and how you're going to get by and and what you should do and are you going to move and what you shouldn't do and all these different things. And just know And especially, and I've said this before, but especially as a believer, you have to be in tune with the fact that people are watching you,
Yeah.
because boy, what a moment to challenge your faith.
Yeah.
Is he or she going to curse God now
Mhm.
that their prayers weren't answered? Because, you know, a lot of us, some of you, you know, you just found out like your spouse left to work and was in a car accident and died. You know, but a lot of us, our spouse was sick and we knew it was coming,
Right.
and we were praying, or they got in a car accident and they didn't die immediately, and they were in the hospital for a few days before they died, and everybody was rallying to pray and pray and pray for a miracle, and then they see that God didn't answer that prayer in the
Right.
way that we thought, and so they're wondering, are you going to curse God? Are you going to, you know, turn your back on your faith? And so I would say to be aware that people are watching you, and you know, just ask people to pray for you, because that shows great faith. Ask people
Mhm.
to pray for you, because it shows that you're not sidetracking from your faith, that it's still priority in your life. It's still your go-to.
Mhm.
But you know, then there's the real life things like, well, what do you got to do now? Well, you got to get a lot of death certificates. That's
Yes.
something I didn't know. Someone's like, how
Mhm.
many death certificates do you want? I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean,
Mhm.
one? And they're like, no, well, you're
Mm.
going to need them for certain things.
Yeah, I
And
knew
so I
that.
got
Mhm.
5. And I
Yeah.
didn't know I got 5. And now I look back and I'm like, man, maybe I should have got 10.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's just a little thing. That's a little piece of advice. Like, you know, have death certificates.
Yeah.
You're also going to need to get everything transferred into your name.
Mhm.
And you're going to have grief doing that, because you're
Yep.
going to have to show death certificates. You're
Yep.
going to have to explain it so many times.
Mhm.
You
What was the
know,
moment like for you when you first saw the death certificate?
to be honest with you, there was a lot of my first thing, and I'm just being real here. My first thing is that I looked and make sure that they didn't put COVID-19 as the cause
So
of
did
death.
I.
It was very important to me to
Uh-huh.
make sure that that wasn't put
Yep,
on there, because
me
there was a
too.
lot of that going
Uh-huh.
around. And I had a friend personally, his mom passed away, and it was of a drug overdose,
Mhm.
and they put COVID-19 as the death.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I knew of people that had gotten
Yeah.
in car accidents, and because they tested positive for COVID, it was a COVID-19 death.
Mhm.
And so honestly, that was the first
I
thing
did that
I thought
too.
of. And
Yeah.
I felt a little bit of relief when I saw that it was from cancer in a weird way, because I didn't want to have that fight after what I was going through. But it was very surreal. And I honestly, I can't be totally open with all the things I felt,
Mhm.
because it's uncomfortable for me to talk about, knowing that certain people are listening.
Mhm.
Not for the sake that I'm like, you know, insecure about it or anything, but just it's a hard reality of a
Yeah.
lot of the things that were going through my mind.
Mhm.
And so I'll keep that to myself. But it was hard. It was hard. It was
Right?
very
So
real.
weird.
And seeing
Yeah.
like, well, just seeing the date on there that certain things took place were
Mhm.
very weird to me. And
Mhm.
there was just a lot. It was very strange
Yeah, it was so weird.
and very awkward and uncomfortable. And I hated it, to be honest. I don't like using that word, but I hated it. I hated that I had to deal with it. I hated
Yep.
that this was my reality, and that beautiful, amazing woman was gone.
Right.
And it was hard. It was really hard. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
It was yeah. I'm sorry,
It's
I kind of
okay.
lost it there a little
No,
bit,
it's
but
okay. It's
I was like remembering the feelings, and
yeah.
it was it sucked. That's about
Yeah.
the best way I can put it. It just really sucked.
Yeah. It was so weird, like so final. I remember seeing it for the first time and just like, what? And like it just was so weird. and they actually got some stuff wrong on it, which was very interesting.
Oh,
It said
wow.
cause of death, right leg. I mean, they put it was his right leg, but they put left leg,
Oh, whoa.
sarcoma, and then metastasized to lungs, cancer, whatever. But I was like, what am I gonna do? Call them and tell them to put right leg? Who cares? But
Yeah,
that was
that's a
very
good point.
interesting. Like, okay, they got that wrong. I know which leg he was, had amputated.
That's
But
good you had the clarity though, because I don't know. I would have felt like that was something else. I would have felt like I was like, oh my gosh, I got to handle this now, you
I
know?
was just like, whatever, I'm gonna let that one slide. Like, will it matter in anything? No.
Right.
I know
Yeah.
which leg he had amputated. I was there.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
it was
But
weird.
you go ahead. Sorry.
I just like the finality, like seeing like you see birth certificates, but I had never seen a death certificate ever. I had no reason
Hmm.
that I ever would. And so I never knew what they actually looked like and all the information and like his parents' names on there and like just and it had, I remember I thought this was weird, but they said it was normal. It had his mom with her maiden name on it. And I was
Mm.
like, that's
Hmm.
strange. But they said, no, that's how they come. And it was just a weird experience because I'd never, experienced it before. And it's weird when you have to show a death certificate. Like, probably my
It
most
is.
recent, I was changing the truck into my name. Now Hayden's driving it. I wanted it in my name. Anyways, they had to see a death certificate. It's just weird when you,
It is weird. And you reminded me of that because I forgot that I had to do that also. I had to make the super uncomfortable phone call to Lacey's parents to get their place of birth and
oh,
just all
yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
information from them that it was like, sorry, it has to go on her death certificate.
Yeah.
It
That's
was
weird.
very uncomfortable. And we were all going through it together, and they've been very good to me, and like we have a really close relationship.
Right.
So it wasn't like I was afraid they were gonna like be mad at me or something, but like it just was uncomfortable that I had to like call him and remind him like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I need this information from you.
Yeah.
um but those are, I know we kind of got off track a little bit, but but the biggest thing, and this is the most important thing, and I know you'll agree with me, the most important thing that you can do being newly widowed is lean into God.
Oh, yeah. For
Like,
sure.
you have to do that. You have to make a conscious effort because you're
Mm,
not going to feel like it. To be honest, you're probably not going to feel like it.
right.
Um, but if you pick up your Bible and you pray to God before you even open it to have him speak to you, and just do that as much as you can, even if
Right.
it's just opening up a Bible app on your phone
Yep.
and like doing like what I did and saying, God, please speak to me through the verse of the day.
Right.
And if you can just start there, but the biggest, most important thing you can do is lean into God, because nothing else, Michelle
Mm-hmm.
and I tell you, no, we don't have the advice to give you. It comes
Right.
from God. The healing
True.
comes from God. And yeah, that's like the biggest thing I learned, that I was like, wow,
Right.
like God really does carry you through these dark, hard times and gives you perspective and
Right.
gives you abilities to see things that you wouldn't normally see. Like I've shared this before. God gave me this gift as I prayed for his help. Because I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't go on like this. I can't do this by myself. I can't raise kids by myself. I can't do
Mm-hmm.
this. Like, I quit. That was how I felt, in those first few days. Actually, even leading up to it. Um, but he gave me this gift that every time I looked at a picture of Lacey, I saw this beautiful, gorgeous smile, and it just made me like see her in heaven.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
and I just got to like, I get this vision of her, and it's almost like she's like, I don't want to be there anymore, Mark.
Right.
I want to be here.
Right.
And so that's been this really peaceful,
That's
joyful gift
awesome.
that God has given me. So, yeah.
No, that's good. What I think of leaning into God, what I did a lot of was worship music. Lots and
Mm,
lots and lots of crying and worship music over and over. I can't remember all the songs right now, but I just remember playing worship songs and laying on the floor crying. And yeah, it was so hard. So hard. But that was definitely a way that I felt comfort. And listening to sermons helped, like anything to help me feel like connected with God. Definitely doing that. That was huge. Something else to go along with what you were saying about like people and giving grace to people. Like they're gonna say the wrong things. Like, I don't know how you do it. I didn't quite get the accent right this time. Like, well, people are
more
gonna
Minnesota, more
yeah,
Minnesota.
that wasn't right. I got it. But like they'll say the wrong things. Like there's a whole list of I think we've even done an episode about that. But people are gonna say the wrong things, but learning to give them grace. Like I would rather somebody say something and say the wrong thing than say nothing at all. I think that's worse when they don't even acknowledge that you've lost somebody. What's one of my personal pet peeves is when I get a message from someone on Facebook who hasn't talked to me in years. They've never acknowledged that my husband died, but they want to sell me something. I have a hard time with that. Like really hard time.
Yeah.
With
bro, you got all that widow money.
Yeah. It just feels wrong to not first at least acknowledge like, hey, I'm so sorry about your loss. Right. Or they contacted me about like there's
and then ask you to buy the Tupperware.
Yeah, exactly. But like I just think that's just a personal pet peeve. But
yeah,
and now it's getting longer that I don't expect everyone's gonna say something right when they see me if they haven't seen me. But I kind of expect it. If we're friends, I haven't seen you for years, and you've never acknowledged it, I expect the next time we talk, you're gonna acknowledge it. Like, so sometimes I'll just bring it up, like, we've been doing good since Lou passed away, and we're doing good now. Yeah. And, like,
at least like a, hey, how have you guys been?
Yeah. Something,
or whatever.
Like, I think they think they're going to upset you or whatever. But I would rather them say something, but they're going to say stupid things and they're going to give you advice on like, you should be dating. You shouldn't be dating, like you should do this. You shouldn't do this.
Yeah. Like they've walked the road so many times that they know how
exactly. Like, and I think that's why as widows, we sometimes have a hard time, like, especially people that haven't been through it. Like, don't give me advice, something that you haven't been through. And that's why we can have like impact on people's life because we've been through it. So we can tell you, but I wouldn't listen. Like, that's why I called on my widow friends when Luke died, because I'm not going to listen to anybody else about it's going to get better. They're going to tell me that, but they don't know. Like, I want people who have lived it.
Well, it's kind of like taking the financial advice about how to be independently free from your debt from the guy who's $20,000 in credit card debt,
Same kind of thing. You want to like hear from people who've been through it. And so, we have a whole episode about, the stupid things people say or something like that. Maybe we call it ridiculous. That's
ridiculous. That's right.
So we have gone all through that, but giving grace to people. So
and this is an important one also. That I've thought of is it's natural, I think. This is something I went through, but when your spouse passes away, you all of a sudden feel like, sort of this feeling that like you're free to be your own person now. Yes. You're not living in the way that you're used to with you kind of make your own decisions.
Yep.
You have to be aware that temptations will arise, be it drinking or shopping or, being free to like hook up with people or whatever it might be. Obviously, you're free to make your own decisions. I'm not trying to pass judgment on anybody, but as believers, we still want to walk with Christ. And so we still don't want to be going down those roads because, and I don't know, maybe this is men because, for me, it's very good for me to have somebody in my life because it gives me a sense of accountability. So I don't know if that's a man thing or men and women both experience that. But, for me, I had to make conscious decisions to not do stupid things, because, you're all of a sudden tempted to drink more or to shop more or whatever, because there's nobody telling you that you shouldn't be doing that. And, but we still have to remember that we are accountable to our Father in heaven. And that might just be me giving advice to myself. I don't know if anybody else struggles with that, but I'm just being real that's something that I went through,
It has to do with, like we talk about in Counterfeit Comfort. It's about finding something else to fill that void.
Yes,
and
good point.
The only thing that will fill it is God, but we can try other things. but nothing will fill it. And so
Right.
I think that's kind of probably where that comes from. And yeah, you're like, I can do anything I want, and I think as widows too, we can go down that path. Well, I deserve this. Like, look what I just went through, but never, that should never be something that makes us cross moral boundaries or whatever. But I think that might be like a tactic of the enemy sometimes, to be like, you deserve this, look what
It's funny you say that. I found, okay, this is pretty personal, but this is Lacey's post on Facebook a year before she passed away.
Oh, wow.
She said, so I'm sorting out all these lies the devil is trying to plant, that God gave me this trial, that I may have done something wrong, that it is a message against some future plans I had, etc. And I realize I need to be wise enough to get these answers in scripture-based form, either directly from the word or from people with a strong command of the word. So often we accidentally share misinformation with each other because we're trying hard to be humanly wise when we need to simply use the Bible. Just wanted to share that lesson I'm working on.
Wow.
And, she did kind of conquer that, because for a while she was like, awesome. I don't know. I don't understand like why I'm being given this trial. She never she never said like, why me, or, why did this happen to me or anything like that. But she did go through, some bouts of like, gosh, did I do something wrong? And it was a trial in her head that she was like overcoming, where she was like, no, we live in a sinful world. We live in a fallen world, and illness is part of that. And so she knew that it came from a sinful world and not from God. But it was just interesting that, as you said that, I remembered this post that she had written. And so I looked it up real quick, but it just reminded me that she was like going through some spiritual battles,
Yeah, that's so beautiful that you have those posts with her thoughts about this. Luke was not a big like social media or public person, so we don't have any of that, but I think it's very beautiful to read what she was thinking as she was going through it.
I have lots of those. I'll share them, over time or whatever. There were lots of really encouraging. She was, that was one of the ones when she was kind of feeling, funky. But I have many where she is just a warrior, where she is just like fearless. And she's like, if God's calling me home, then God's calling me home, and I accept that. And, just, of course, it was hard for me to read because I'm like, no, no, but she was fearless. She was the most, like I said in episode 1, that not only the most courageous woman, but the most courageous person I've ever known by far. I mean, she was fearless. She was fearless. That's just the best way to explain it. Nurses would show up and she's like, yeah, enough about me. How is everything with your mom in that situation? Like,
amazing.
Can I pray for you? And they're like, I can't even tell you how many times the nurse would be silent. And, I'm doing my own thing. I'm busy trying to help Lacey. And so my eyes are on my hands and what I'm doing as she's conversing with the nurse, and the nurse wouldn't say anything. And I would look up at the nurse, and the nurse is weeping in tears, because she's like, how can you be in the position you're in and have compassion for my mother-in-law not liking me? Like, I don't understand how you can. And it was like, she's like, because your problems matter too. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I am such a blessed man to have married this woman. Like, she was a rock star, and she is. She's still very much alive. Just I don't get to enjoy her presence anymore. But yeah, I had a dream about her the other night. I've had a few recently. It was sad because it was another one of those ones where we were together, and it was like nothing had ever happened. No cancer. We were just living life together. Yeah. And then you wake up and you're like, dang it. Like, but so anyways, drifting off topic again, but these are things, I guess, that it still helps for the widowed community to know that you're going to go through. And we've all heard it said that grief comes in waves.
Yes.
Sometimes they're just little ripples, sometimes they're waves that just keep crashing on you and you feel like you're drowning. But as Michelle and I have expressed, it is absolute truth that it'll get to a point where those waves are fewer and further between, and they're smaller waves, and you don't have these big waves that just engulf you. So it is a run out the clock situation in what we're going through here. Because if you keep looking to God and you keep your mind focused on heavenly things, biblical things, biblical truths, you will find healing. It's inevitable. You're going to. If you choose to, and I say that with being very delicate, trying to be very delicate with my words, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but there is a certain element of choosing to stay in the grief.
Right. Yep.
It doesn't mean that that's always the case. And I'm not saying if you're going through a hard time right now that you're choosing it, or especially if you're in those beginning stages, you're in it right now. If you're in the beginning, and I'd say the first 6 months, like, there is no choosing to be happy. Like, that's and even years out, because there is no timeline, but you will get to a certain point where God can deliver you from your grief, and you can still choose to hold on to it. Because I do it to myself. I just did it the other day. I chose to watch Lacey's memorial service again. And as if you've listened to our show, you know that I've done this to myself many times. And sure enough, I wept and I cried, and I had to tell my kids, I'm so sorry, I just miss mommy. And I did it to myself. It was like I wanted to feel that pain. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's just an example that, like, I chose to be sad, and that was okay. I felt like
it's okay.
Doing that.
Yeah. Sometimes that's healing.
But I just wanted to give you guys that heads up that you will get to a certain point where you can make the choice to be sad about it. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. If you want to feel that pain, that's okay. But you'll also be able to choose. This is just my experience. But you will be able to choose knowing that they're in God's graces, and that they're in a much better, I know that's such a cliche thing to say, like they're in a better place, but like, we as believers know that it truly is a better place, and we all wish we were all there. But anyways, that's just, I'm not telling anybody how to feel or anything, but that's just in my experience. I've gotten to a point now where my sadness comes when I choose it. And sometimes I choose it because it feels good. It feels good to kind of let it out.
Yeah.
But I could have gone a different path and gone on with my day. So anyways,
that kind of
digging in myself a rabbit hole.
leads me to what I've said before, but let yourself feel what we feel we can heal. So especially those first few months, you're going to feel a lot, and you don't want to suppress your feelings. Like, you might be in the grocery store and see a food that your spouse used to love, and you are going to try to hold back those tears. Don't. Who cares who sees you crying? Like, if anybody says something, you can say, my spouse just died. Like, it's fine. So let yourself feel it whenever you're having those feelings. Do not suppress them. It's something I talk to my kids about a lot, is that you need to let yourself feel it. Otherwise, it's going to get all like clogged up. You got to like let it all out, and so that you can move forward. And so really, really let yourself feel those emotions, no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing. If you're sad, that's okay. It's actually part of the whole process.
Yeah. And can you give people, because I think you touched on something important that people in the beginning might not be aware of, is triggers.
Yes. Triggers.
Can you think of some other examples of triggers, things that, that one you mentioned was a really good one in the grocery store?
Yeah. I was also in the bookstore, and we had bought this book for Luke for him to answer questions like before he died. And I saw the same book in the bookstore, and that was a trigger. When I went to Disney World recently, trigger, because it was just like Disneyland where I went with him. The first time that you like go to a special restaurant, or like, I mean, there's stuff all the time that's
Mhm.
triggers, like, oh, the last time I was here was with Luke. That's weird. Or like now it doesn't bother me. It's more like, oh, I have a special memory here with Luke. That's cool. But in the
Mm.
beginning, it was like, I don't think I can be in this place if the last time I was here was with him.
That's quite the milestone to achieve.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important that people, you know, you touched on something really good, that I think it's important that people that are in the beginning know that
Yeah. That
you
you're
could
gonna
be
have triggers.
feeling just fine. You could be laughing, having a great time out with friends, whatever it might be. And then one little thing,
Oh yeah.
it could be a smell.
Uh-huh.
I've smelled things where I'm like, that was the body lotion she had, or whatever.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
the shampoo she used. You know, for some of you, it might be cologne or perfume that your spouse
Yeah.
wore, or things you see, or couples holding hands,
Oh
or
yeah. Yeah.
a couple, you know, you might see a husband like brush something out of a wife's hair, and you remember your husband did that,
Yes.
or your wife, you did that for her. So just to give you a heads up that there
That's
are
good.
triggers that'll
Triggers,
just set
yeah.
you off out of nowhere, and you need to be aware of that. And like Michelle said, don't try to suppress it like I do, because it's not beneficial. Sorry.
I remember it being like, you can suddenly, like that, it still happens. Like when I was in Disney World, you can be transported to a whole, like, it's like you're like
Mhm.
in a different world all of a sudden. And it also
Yep.
helps me to be more aware of other people. You have no idea what they're thinking in that moment. It might be about a loved one that died. You have
Yep.
no clue, and to be more sensitive to people and what's going on in their minds, because we have no idea. But yeah, there's so many triggers and things that can come out of nowhere. But like we were saying, the good news is you still have them, but it's not like, it's more like, oh, that was a good memory. I mean,
Mhm.
I was a little sad at Disney World for a little bit, because it was remembering a time when he was very sick and near the end and stuff like that. But it, you know, was able to get out of that quickly. But it is something that now it is more like special when I'm somewhere like, oh yeah, Luke and I went here. And then I just like let myself think about it for a minute. And like, instead of being sad, I'm usually like, that was a really great memory. I'm glad I have that memory. And, you know, letting it be something like that. And
Yeah, time really does heal.
It does.
Because you get so used to this new life. You do. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, of course, there's loneliness, and you miss your old life. Not even for me, it's not even always only that I miss Lacey. It's that I miss the life that we had. I
Right.
miss having those jokes together, and that
Mhm.
they're just being so in tune with one another.
Yes.
And you know, you miss that. It's like we built this beautiful marriage, we built it, and then it's gone, and
Right.
all you have is memories of it. And
Mhm.
you know, and so yeah, there's a lot of times where I'll still like see something, and like we used to have this thing, it's super dorky, but whatever. It was just this thing we had where she would call me and she'd leave a voicemail where she'd say, just randomly, she's like, you're gonna get weird messages, you're gonna get weird
She's so cute.
messages. And then she would like just
my
say
gosh.
some weird, so it was like this calling
So
that we had for
cute.
each other. And it was just so, it's super random, but it's one of those things that
Right.
it pops in your head, and you have this realization that like there's not another person on the planet that I share this with.
Right.
And so you know,
Mhm.
you will go through these bouts of missing
Mhm.
them that are intense, and the reality of your situation will hit you sometimes too,
Yes.
and you realize how intense
It's
it
so
is.
weird. Yeah.
It is, you know,
That
when you're
happens to
like,
me at
whoa,
night
like I'm
sometimes.
responsible. Yeah, me too.
Mhm. When you're
You're
like,
like, I'm responsible
whoa.
for raising these children alone. Like
Mhm.
I'm responsible for their outcome.
Or like, it just hits me sometimes. I'm like, wait, he really died. Like, he
Mm,
really, like, even though it's been almost 2 years, it's just
right.
like a weird thought. And I was going to say another trigger, Facebook memories. Now it's a good
Mhm.
thing for me, but in the beginning it was super hard. And you can turn those off in the settings. Like if you don't want to see them, you say don't include this person or whatever. But now I love them. I like look forward to it. I go, you know, every day, oh, here's your memories. And like, what were we doing? it's weird now that he's not included in anything from a year ago. 2 years ago, we're getting to the end of the memories. But that for me has been a trigger, but now it's something that I like, and I like to share my memories sometimes on Facebook, like, oh yeah, but also no, people stop care. I mean, it's not that they stop caring, but they don't always, we've talked about this, like, like your memory post, because it's like you do so many, blah blah blah. So I just do it for me because I'm like, this is a good memory. I like this memory.
I feel you on that, and it's interesting. It's like I've said before, and I just believe it so much that it's like the best way to say it, in my opinion, is that like life moves on, and
yes.
It becomes the wow factor. I was just mentioning this to somebody. The wow factor. At first it's like everybody's posting.
Oh yeah.
It. Like, oh my God, like people coming out of the woodworks.
Right.
People that I'm like, did you even know that she had cancer? And like all of a sudden you want to make this tribute about what a sweet, loving person she was. And then the people will respond and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And they're like, thanks. It's hard. I'm like, you haven't spoken to her in years.
Right.
And you're just on here for credit, or I had people, and I know I'm only saying it in this tone because I know a lot of you probably relate and get frustrated with this stuff too. I had people reaching out that were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What happened?
Oh, yes.
And it's like, they just want the inside scoop of like what went on so they can go talk about it or whatever. And I'm like, she passed away.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, but like what happened?
Oh my gosh.
Like what was, and I'm like, dude, no, I'm not responding to this, but
that's common.
It's just interesting. I had people like that were tagging her in posts that I'm like, I didn't even know you guys were friends still on Facebook. Like I have not seen you guys. She hasn't mentioned you.
Right.
Like you guys haven't spoken since junior high or whatever, and like they just happen to be Facebook acquaintances. And because she was tagged in all these posts, they felt the need to make this big old post about, how close they were in junior high.
Like, oh, I'm so sorry you lost your friend. And you're like, they didn't even know her.
Yeah. Or the people giving condolences to these random people, where you're like, and they're accepting it. That's it doesn't bother me. I think it's sweet that the people are like, I'm so sorry for your loss. But what bothers me is them accepting it. They're like, thanks.
We were so
it's just been a hard day. I'm like, you get out of here with it. It's a hard day. Like, anyways. I'm getting kind of off track, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate. So that's another thing for those of you in the beginning. People are going to want to know what's going on. They're going to want to have the inside scoop, and it's going to be obnoxious.
And you don't have to tell them. You do whatever you want. Like that's really common. I've actually seen a couple of videos recently on TikTok about like how frustrated when people ask what happened. Like they're frustrated that people ask that because it doesn't feel like they really care sometimes. They just want to know the gossip. What's happening? Like what happened to them? And
I mean, I wouldn't ask that. That's what makes me think it's inappropriate, because that would not even cross my mind to ask. Like that is not okay to ask. Sure, I want to know sometimes when I hear something crazy. Like, of course you want to know. You're human. We like knowing things, but like I would never ask. Like, gosh, there's people that I still am curious what happened to their spouse or what happened to their whomever. But I'm like, I'm not going to ask. If they want to tell me, they can tell me.
Right.
If not, then it's not my business.
Look back on their Facebook and figure it out. Or if you really need to know, ask somebody else. Don't ask them. Like,
and it's just weird. It's weird to ask anyways, because it's like, it doesn't matter. They're gone.
Right.
Exactly. But so you'll see some stuff like that. That'll be. So I was wondering a question when I thought of this. This might be good for women to know if this is true. It wasn't so much an issue with me, but it just made me think, just because, the opposite sexes, things are often different. Did you have men like reaching out to you, like that you felt like had like other intentions, if that makes sense? Like nothing like terrible, but just like, oh, she's available now or anything like that?
I felt like people were super, and probably everyone has different stories, but I felt like people were super respectful. I mean, except for like people that don't know me on Instagram being like, can I be your sugar daddy? Those kind of things, like on my widow page. But as far as like people I knew, no, people were super, super respectful. So I didn't get any of that.
That's good. I was just curious because I didn't either. I mean, there were, of course, things here and there that were kind of weird. But I didn't get any like, hey, I want to be with you now that you're available,
Right.
but I was like, but wait a minute though, for a woman, that might be a common thing or something like that, so I was just curious.
Yeah.
So
No.
anyways, okay. So, well, then that was a big waste of time. I was hoping for some juicy
Sorry.
details about.
Sorry, my friends were respectful.
You will never believe what this guy did. No, but anyways, so yeah, well, that's I know we're approaching the wrap it up point. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I mean, I know we have lots more advice. Maybe we'll do a part 2, but I think this was like a really good start to the big stuff you're going to deal with in the beginning. And so to kind of conclude it, I would say the biggest thing is yes, leaning into God and knowing it will get better. And those two are kind of tied together.
And it's always funny to me when you say it's a really good start.
Why is that?
Well, Michelle has this thing when we're trying to think of a topic for an episode or just brainstorming together. And I come up with what I think is like a really great idea. And she goes, it's a good start.
Right? Because that's such a teacher thing. To be like, that's a great start.
And I'm like, so no, right?
Yeah, so that's a no. So yeah, I didn't even think about that when I said it, but yeah, usually that means not that great. But I was thinking this is a good start.
That's your polite way of saying no, that's a horrible idea.
That's a great start. Like when we were trying to think of names for the podcast too, there was a lot of that's a great start.
Yeah.
Great start. There was a lot of,
but I will take credit that I did think of the
Mark did
the
think
title
of,
for the
yes, he did. We were like, that's it. We don't.
But it's funny because a lot of people think we don't know how to spell, so we put the number 2. But it's because there's 2 of us, just in case y'all don't know. Yeah, I said y'all.
Yes, you did. And it's all taken the widowed 2 with a TO, like all everything. Widowed 2 soon works better. So we do know how to spell. And Mark did come up with the name. We've never said that. I don't think so. Now you get your 1 second of fame for
Thank
coming
you.
up with
Everybody hear that? Can I get a round of applause for the name? Thank you.
Widowed Too Soon. Like that is something that you created, like the name. So good.
Thank you. Job. You hear that, ladies and gentlemen?
But let's go back to the original.
I am creative and clever.
Yeah, but if I didn't think of the idea.
Oh yeah, no, the idea was all you.
Well,
I think you actually right. I think you actually persisted on it. I think it was the 3rd time that you asked me, and I had said no. I think 2 other times
doing the podcast.
I think it was 2 times that I said no. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, and then you were like, "I really think it's a good idea," and I'm like, "I don't know." And then it was as you told me the 3rd time, I felt the Spirit's leading, like, step out of your comfort zone and do this. I'm glad I did now.
I know, right?
I enjoy doing this. And I've met a lot of really great people.
I know. I love it.
I can give shouts out to lots of people. Lots of really good people.
I know. And you know what's been really fun? So we have our Widowed Too Soon page, but as someone pointed out, that's a public page. Like if you write on there, anybody can see it. And so that's why this last week I created a new one called Grief Goals, because I want people that are going through grief or whatever to be able to be part of it. And like I presented it at my event the other day. And so that's a place. I'll put a link to it. I'll put links to both of them. Like you can come to our Widowed Too Soon. We're going to always make sure you know what's going on. You can interact there, but just know that's public and I cannot change it. So I created another one and we had a bunch of people from Widowed Too Soon join it and we're able to like introduce themselves and find a place where it's more private. So we have that there. Also as a resource. So you can either look it up, Grief Goals, or I will put a link So
also very early thought about it that Michelle has thought about, and I think it's a great idea. And we're just curious for some feedback if anybody wants to give us any. What would you folks think about doing like a retreat? If you have any feedback or thoughts on that, we'd love to hear, because Michelle and I have thought about how great that would be to do like a live thing and people all come together and we're all praying for each other. And, obviously that'd be way down the road, but just, to get some feedback on if you'd be interested in that sort of thing.
Something in the works.
In the works. Yeah. Yes. So anyways, I'm going to pray and we'll close this out.
All right.
Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity and this time that we get to spend. Thank you for hopefully giving us wisdom to share with people that will bless somebody in some way. You're a good and gracious God. We especially pray for those in the beginning stages of this, Lord, right now, that you would just give them peace, that it's going to be okay. And that's a hard thing to express, and it's something that only you can do. So I pray that you would work that supernatural miracle, and anybody listening that's in the beginning stages, that you would just give them supernatural peace to feel like it's going to be okay. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. If you would like to be a guest or you have anything you want to talk to us about, you can email us at widowed2 soon. Wait. All of a sudden I forgot it. Widowed too soon at gmail.com. Wow. It's been a while since I said this, like a week. You can also send us a message on Instagram, widowed2soon_. Everything's linked below. We'd love to hear from you. And we're just excited that you're here, and just know that it will get better. So we will see you next time.
Word. God bless.